back. W in and out for me into Atlanta, and I got a long week ahead here, as does John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. Luke Jones joins us now to get us prepared for all things who will stop Travis Kelce, right? And who will stop Patrick Mahomes, and where do we go? Because we're going to talk about this Atlanta game all week in 40-20 and third down and running, but very, very soon, Joe Flacco will be throwing the football again and upright, and this question will continue to come back. I'm more concerned with what happens when the defense gets on the field and how we don't have to chase them to the tune of 41 or 44 or 51 this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to come down to how this defense plays down the stretch, and that's one thing that at the bye week, when all of this came to light, that Flacco was dealing with a hip and was probably going to miss at least a couple games. Now that's become 3 games. Now you wonder if he's going to get his job back. Regardless of who's that quarterback, if this team's going to, 1, get to the playoffs, 2, have any chance of making some noise in the playoffs, it's going to have to be on the back of their defense. And that's kind of the way they constructed themselves the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, let's face it, guys like me have been a broken record about the contracts they've given out on the defensive side of the ball and the draft picks that have gone to the defensive side of the ball. So this is what they should be. Now, they're number 1 in so many categories, and we've talked about that, and we've talked about their shortcomings, not creating a ton of turnovers, although they certainly got a big one on Sunday. And the sacks haven't come in bunches since that record performance against the Titans, but they were really able to man up against the Falcons offense that has struggled recently, but certainly has the firepower. And certainly you look at that group on paper and say, you're not expecting to limit them to the yardage that the Ravens did, which was, 131 yards on 45 plays. I mean, they gave up 2.9 yards per play against the Falcons. You're not going to replicate that again necessarily, but you're going to have to play at an extremely high level to have any chance against Kansas City, or to have any chance against the Chargers, or to go into January and, whether you're playing those teams again or you're facing a Houston Texans team, or what happens with the Steelers. I mean, any team that you're talking about from here on out as far as a viable, dangerous football team, a playoff caliber football team, you need your defense to shine, and the Ravens were able to get that on Sunday, and that's something that, let's face it, had been a little more fleeting the last six weeks or so. The defense had been fine, okay, bad in Carolina, bad in the fourth quarter against the Saints, but this was the first time you really felt like the defense was the overwhelming big-time reason why they won the football game. Now, the offense complemented it exceptionally well in the second half, but the defense went out there and just, they imposed. But
it wasn't one player either. It wasn't one takeover. Everyone appeared at some point, including Peanut, right? I mean, not guys that we haven't heard from in a while, but guys we haven't said on Monday morning, because you and I do it every Monday morning. We do it every Sunday night. We sit here and sort of go player by player, as Pro Football Focus want to do, and we say, where are the difference makers? Who's making a difference? And I think in Sunday's game, everybody made a difference. I mean, I can go down the list and say, that guy made a play, that guy made a play. Right. I saw him make a play. He was in the backfield. He blew up a play. Eric Weddle stripped a ball. I mean, Julio Jones, 2 receptions, 18 yards. That's going to hang there in the same way that, I guess we go back to Jacksonville when Jimmy Smith hung 291 on him, right, or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, definitely. But you're right, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so strange, despite the fact that this defense has been so, great statistically, and I know people will harp on the legitimacy of that and how good this group is, and we've argued about it and we've debated about it, and hey, I've had my doubts about it too. I've said all year, despite the shiny statistics, it hasn't been dynamic enough when you look at the lack of takeaways, the fact that they've been pretty mediocre in the red zone, quite frankly. Now, they haven't given up a ton of opportunities in the red zone, but when teams have moved inside the 20 against them, they've given up quite a few touchdowns. So those are 2 big categories that defenses are judged on especially in this day and age, understanding that offense is king. So I understand why there's been some, I don't know if trepidation is the right word, but there's been a reluctance to embrace this defense and say, well, okay, they're number one in yards, they're number one in points, but they don't create turnovers. They haven't made those splash-type plays that you need in this day and age. They haven't been particularly great in the red zone. Their third down defense has been good, definitely. But
I thought the 9 quarters, like if you go back to Breeze and what happened there, and then I thought in Carolina, and I know I was standing in front of Coach Harbaugh. I was the one that asked him the question. They looked really tired. They looked slow. And then Pittsburgh came, and they just didn't look good enough that day. I feel like the bye energized them, and then the bye combined with this, at least our offense is going to go out there and run around a little bit, burn a few minutes off, maybe move the sticks once or twice, create a play, and we're going to get a breather. And then it's turned into, over this month, we're only going to play 45 snaps in 20 minutes. That won't be the case this week, but it will mean fresher legs, I would think, as well as sort of some fresh mojo. It feels good to win, right? I mean, I know what that locker room felt like after the Pittsburgh game. So do you. And it's totally different now. It's re-energized. Some young guys have sort of tasted it a little bit here, and guys that are playing for money like Judon and Zadarius Smith, and guys that are playing for glory like Suggs and Weddle at this point. Marshall Yonda out there run blocking like, he's 24 again. I mean, and the O-line having injuries the way it has with Alex Lewis, and Bozeman comes in, and Skur has been pretty stout, and Ronnie Stanley's been in and out and hurt and back and in. But, Gallion, he's back in there, and here we go. It's all sitting there for them. So this is a very energizing week, I think, for them, and I don't think anybody thinks they're going to win. To your point, they're going to be a double-digit dog on the road, but I think they can go out there and hold their own. I don't think they're going to go out there and get embarrassed.
Yeah, it's hard to say. You never really know until they go out there and play. But, one more point on the defense, though, and this still, nothing about Sunday changed my mindset on this, but it has been a defense this year where even with some of their lesser performances, it really feels like this defense has been a sum is greater than the parts kind of defense. Because, Nestor, right now, who on that defense is having a Pro Bowl caliber season right now?
No one.
Let's go through it. I don't think Weddle it has at all. I don't think Terrell Suggs has at all. I don't think C.J. Mosley, quite frankly. I think he's been banged up and he's looked slow, and I think he's really been dealing with some ailments. Maybe he does make it because he's made it 3 out of his 4 seasons, and you know how the reputation thing kind of carries you, but I don't think he's been Pro Bowl caliber. I think Marlon Humphrey has certainly taken a step forward, but I wouldn't put him in the Pro Bowl category just yet. A funny name that I would throw out there, and he's not going to be in the Pro Bowl, but Michael Pierce has been exceptional this year, but he's not even a starter. They rotate, and he's kind of on that second unit, and they mix and match him and Brandon Williams to try to keep both of them fresh. If there's anyone that's played at, for lack of a better phrase, an elite level for what they do and for what Michael Pierce is asked to do, he might be the closest thing I would come to on that, but he's not a Pro Bowl player.
Well, I would give you Humphrey. I would go back to him and say he is the emerging player here, right? I think we can all see that. In the same way that Brandon Williams was the emerging player 2 or 3 years ago, right? Like, we saw him playing a little better than his number, a little better than his draft pick. And we see that, through the course of 20 years, we've seen that.
Yeah, right. But even with him, I wouldn't put him in the category to say that he's one of the 4 or 5 best corners in the AFC. I'd probably put him in that next tier after that. So, but what my point is, you don't have anyone on this defense individually having an unbelievable year. Zadarius Smith has had a really nice season going into a contract, but he's been a role player prior to this year, and he's still a role player. He's not a starter on this defense. So it really does speak to what Wink Martindale's been able to do, even with some of their hiccups over the last 6 weeks and some of their struggles. And I'll remind everyone they played some pretty good offenses over that time period too. It's not a defense that comes to mind if you're asking me who the greatest defenses in franchise history have been. I don't know where they rank on that list. I wouldn't put them particularly high, but they're getting it done in this era where very few teams play any kind of defense. And I think you have to give them credit there. And, again, context is such a big key when you're trying to evaluate groups. And for all their shortcomings that they might have and lack of a dominant player, a Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, even Terrell Suggs in his prime, Haloti Ngata in his prime type player that they don't have on this defense, they sure got the job done on Sunday, and you really have to give them a lot of credit for that.
He is Luke Jones. You can find him, Baltimore Luke, out on Twitter if I'm not choking to death on Mr. Blank's cookies. Macadamia nuts. They don't go with radio so well, Luke. So everybody on the camera is watching me go down. All of this is brought to you by our friends at Lee Tessier. They sell homes there. They're Baltimore's premier realty team and the folks I trust with my real estate transaction. I'm in the process of selling my condo right now, and it's been a pleasure to work with Lee Tessier, Tim Bright, and the team at LeeTessier.com. They were giving away pumpkin pie last week. Well, that's a little smoother than the macadamia nuts. The Maryland Jockey Club and our friends at Laurel sponsoring our morning newspaper. All of that, of course, brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com as well, where it's always $5 down, $10 a month. The Maryland Jockey Club entries on the front of WNST.net as well as in our morning newspaper. So make some space to get down to Laurel Park here for the winter. Nice and warm inside and completely remodeled. You're going to dig it if you haven't been to Laurel lately. Cole Roofing sponsors our community and charity series. That's usually on Thursday. So if you have a good story out there that you want to tell me, throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. I'd love to put you on the air. I'm sure at various points you've heard me chatting with other people in the community about 5Ks and 10Ks and events and fundraising and charitable concerns and good efforts, and certainly here during the holiday season, if you have something, our friends at Cole Roofing sponsoring that series, throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. Also, King Discount Liquors, lottery beer, booze, the best prices in Baltimore. Get on out, give the King a ring. They got it all, man. The peppermint stuff, the eggnog stuff, the gingerbread stuff, all the stuff you're going to want around the tree for Christmas Eve and for New Year's and whatever you're celebrating here. I am fresh out of Malbec. I have to go give the King a ring, and I'll see Johnny Bev for the perfect Chianti for my holiday cheer. Probably should drink some Mogan David or some Mad Dog to honor my mom before it's all over with. Luke Jones joining us here. Owings Mills will be abuzz this week with the 7-5 Ravens. And as much as we're talking about the Ravens here, the biggest story in football this week was this off-the-field incident that I'll be talking with Kansas City media folks about and how it relates to the team. And certainly we're still sort of reeling around here from the Ray Rice thing in certain ways. I think Steve Bisciotti is. And Ray Rice appeared over the weekend. And here we go to Kansas City where, yeah, they won. They gave up a lot of points. They scored a lot of points. But there was some turmoil going on around there. And I saw Scott Pioli. He and I exchanged some pleasantries in Atlanta. He's one of my favorite people in football, so it's always good to see him. But I know he had incidents in Kansas City that, quite frankly, are unspeakable. Kansas City's had its own little rough patch of time with players committing suicide in parking lots and, quarterbacks going down and being cheered, as I saw there with Matt Castle and the famous Eric Winston speech where I was at the locker room, in the mouth of the locker room at Arrowhead that day. Controversy, right? And where it is and what time of the year it happens. This is not a good thing for the Chiefs right now and not a good thing for football. And obviously the Snyders down in D.C. signing a guy who's, 3 days earlier getting rung up by the cops. This isn't good for the league amidst all the Kaepernick and all the things that are going on, right?
Well, of course not. The biggest issue that I come back to, and I know clearly with the video being released by TMZ, the parallels with Ray Rice are Captain Obvious kind of stuff, right? You can debate which video was more disturbing.
We sat here for 6 months every day and said, how did the Ravens not get the footage? How did the league not get the footage? And here we are, 3 years later and some change, and they're still playing the hokey pokey, quite frankly.
Right. And that's what I come back to, and I thought ESPN's interview with Kareem Hunt, I don't think he did anything to really serve himself well. I suppose I respect the fact that he requested an interview, but at the same time, him confirming, and there had been other reports, different outlets have reported this over the weekend, that the league neither sought to talk to neither Kareem Hunt or the woman in the video. And it's just, have you not learned anything here? I mean, how have you not learned from your mistakes as a league?
Yeah, it's what you don't see and what you don't know that someone will know that will come back at some point. And, in the case of the first TMZ video, the ticking time bomb of how long they sat on that thing on Ray Rice to release it in the aftermath of, the minute he was coming back, right? It's all so media timed, like deer antler spray, whatever the controversy of the day is, right? But, for the Kansas City Chiefs, this comes out in, week 11. I don't even know what to say at this point other than, and I just read the big game, and I know I gave you Astro Ball. You should go read the big game. But the head in the sand part of all of this for really wealthy owners and the things they've said about Kaepernick and the things they've said that, quite frankly, are un-American in my view, and McNair dying last week after, his comments and, that's part of his legacy now, that all of this is be careful, be very, very, very careful. And it feels like they're be sloppy, be oblivious, be very, very naive and non-committal until you have to be. And even when you have to be, you could probably still lie and turn the page, and you're 2 good weeks of football away from this going away, right? And that's kind of the way they view crisis management. This too shall pass. There'll be another Deflategate. There'll be another thing. There'll be another suicide. There'll be another wife beating. There'll be another thing, and we'll worry about that later. And, I guess for the Chiefs, it's at their doorstep, so shame on them.
Yeah. I think what's amazing to me, and I heard Amy Trask on the CBS pregame show.
One of my favorite people, by the way.
Right. I know you're a big fan. I mean, former CEO, executive for the Oakland Raiders. She spoke about this, and the point that so many people make is that the league doesn't care about this kind of stuff, and that it's all about the bottom line and how much money you're making, and trying to avoid a PR hit or being willfully ignorant, as we talked about at times with the Ravens.
Well, they're not trying to put the best 53 people on the roster. They're trying to put the best 53 football players on the roster.
But I thought she made an interesting point, because she said that it absolutely is in their, because everyone talks about it's all about the bottom line and making money and winning football games, but she said it's absolutely in the league's best interest to care about this. And she said that she actually believes that most people around the league do care about it. It's just basically she was implying they were kind of incompetent. And it's more so a case of you're just a lot of people making really dumb decisions. And it really is amazing from a standpoint of when you consider how much the league does care about the bottom line. And we've talked about this from so many different issues, from putting games in London to having Thursday night football, all the different
stuff that's overtly, well, it's like the guy running the country, overtly and patently dishonest. You're doing this because someone's willing to pay you to do something that is not in your best interest, that's not along the alignment of your integrity, that's not even along the alignment of the right thing to do. You know what I mean? For human bodies in the case of CTE and denial, for human bodies in the case of Thursday Night Football. All that goes on, not to mention now that they are about to go into the business of gambling, right? So for all these years, it was after Jimmy the Greek and the intangibles. Brent, I know you don't have any money on this Cowboys game, Brent. And that was 40 years ago, to the NBA and throwing games and all the issues they've had. Now they're going to align themselves with the point spreads and all the exotic wagering to get their 2% or 5%, whatever their vig is going to be, right, to become the casino house. And how are they going to keep integrity involved in all of that? They're going into areas that are going to be able to be breached to some degree, right? Like when the Russians get a hold of Facebook here, they never had the ability to do that before. So, who makes the rules up when all of this stuff happens? And it's about winning, and it's about losing, and for the coaches, it's about me getting my best player on the field, and for Jerry Jones or Dan Snyder, the rap sheets, the beating of wives, the insensitive names for the teams, the insensitive comments, fake knees taken at the 50-yard line while you profile Kaepernick and blackball him and keep him out of the sport systemically, and propping it up every Sunday and every Thanksgiving and every Christmas. I mean, I've been reading the big game. The dark side of the league and where we are at this point, it bubbles up. It bubbles up again and again. And 2 weeks ago it was Dan Snyder, and last week it's the Kansas City Chiefs with their head in the sand. And it's going to continue to happen until they put somebody like Amy Trask in front of it, right? Like somebody that has integrity, has credibility, can play the hanging judge the way that Goodell kind of wanted to. And there's just, they talk about zero tolerance, right? And then they talk about second chances. Well, there's zero tolerance or there's second chance, right? Like, make up your mind which rail you want to go down. But the league does feel like it's a jellyfish on so many of these things, as, Joe Mixon running around in Cincinnati, who would have been absolutely untouchable here. And I think the Ravens have been burned enough now that they don't like this, and they do really, from Steve down, go out of their way to avoid who's getting locked up on a Monday morning, because it's just, they've already got problems here, as you and I see every Sunday, with empty seats. And certainly, you talk about empty seats in Atlanta, dear God, right? Like, so the league has a lot of issues, but it's still making a lot of money. The Orioles have a lot of issues, but I saw two arrogant kids sitting in Orange Hookah Lounge 2 weeks ago that were born on third base, and it feels like it just runs itself, because in the modern era, these things have just thrown off a lot of money that they didn't for Art Modell in Cleveland, which is why the team appeared here, right? But I think there's so much money being made in the modern era. Dan Snyder only makes money on the Redskins, so none of these decisions affect him. And I don't know where the integrity line is, and I think that's what all of us tend to ask week after week as they fly the flag, roll the military in, ban Kaepernick, talk about racial relations, run from racial relations, talk about cleaning up Ray Rice, and 3.5 years later the same thing happens again. That's all I got. But go ahead, man. I mean, I'll throw to you, because at some point we'll talk football this week. But Kansas City's going to be in the middle of this, and I'm going to be talking about it all week with these Kansas City people, because this has struck the aorta of their football team and their ability to win.
You're right, and I agreed with most everything you just said. We enable it all, though, right? We keep watching, right? I mean, look, that's not to say that if you like the NFL that you condone domestic violence, but this is an organization that has repeatedly failed in that realm, in other realms, and we continue to consume it. And I hear what you say about the cash cow thing, and look, I mean, the TV deals are absurd. I mean, it is just stupid money, especially when you consider the state of television in general at this point anyway, and how that's changed. How the NFL is one of the few products on, quote, regular TV that is still profitable, because it's appointment TV, and it's not something you DVR, and it's not something you're going to go back and stream later like you can with any other TV show or movie that's out there right now.
But I am blown away on a
still enable it, though. You know what I mean?
But on a day-by-day basis,
spending hours talking about spending as much time talking about a football game as it lasted on Sunday. And
then
even
some.
more so, we talk many more hours than that. So I'm not saying that means we're responsible for it, but we certainly enable it. And that's where people who have taken a stand on any number of issues, and I know some of them are, I feel, more legitimate than others, but I do, there are people that I know personally who kind of walked away from the Ravens after the Ray Rice thing for at least a time. Now, they most of them came back, but, there are people who, a very small number, who have walked away from the NFL for certain things. As much as we talk about people not watching after kneeling, there are people out there who don't watch the NFL because of how Colin Kaepernick has been treated.
No doubt about that.
but it is a very small percentage relative to everyone that's waking up on Monday morning and talking about Lamar Jackson or Joe Flacco or talking about Sam Cook throwing the best pass of the day for the Ravens or Justin Tucker making 4 more field goals. You know, I mean,
or the Steelers losing on Sunday night. I mean, we put in a lot of emotion just into watching the other games. If you're vested in the Ravens, I mean, I was on an airplane. Everybody on the airplane was watching the Steelers. You know, I went back to go to the bathroom over North Carolina, and I looked up, and all I saw was Ben Roethlisberger and Phillip Rivers on every TV because that's where we are. But I'll say this, Luke, and we'll get back onto the field. This is the last sort of little soliloquy. I am blown away that I have been unable to give my tickets away for several games this year. The ease with which I could give them away, which I could email them to your brother-in-law and your sister if they wanted to come, or your mother and your brother if they wanted to come, or my son and his wife who live 6 miles away. I am blown away by how many people have zero interest in going to a game, how many people's kids I know have zero interest in going to a game because they play fantasy, they play red zone. The kid on the plane flying down me Saturday, he was playing the video game on his tablet the whole way down, and I'm watching him just enraptured by playing some Giants-Panthers game on some, Madden thing, and he's addicted to it. It's obvious, and the kid loves football, but I don't know who's going to fill these stadia and who's going to play the games, and more than that, the bad news that comes along with this week after week, when are they going to, at some point clean this up and realize they're not running North Dallas 40 anymore, Yeah,
I hear you. A couple things. One, the television experience has gotten too good.
No doubt.
I mean, frankly, it really has. As you know, I didn't make the trip to Atlanta. Watching the game on television with high definition, and it certainly helped hearing Tony Romo and Jim Nantz call the game on CBS. I mean, that's a good experience right there. But with everything else that you talked about, from daily fantasy teams, gambling, red zone, all of that.
Yeah, I'm old school. I'm just a Ravens fan with a Flacco jersey. I just want my team to win. You know what I mean? There's very few of me left, I think.
But it is such a good experience on television. And I've said this to you before. I'll say it again. The future of professional sports in terms of stadiums in this country, they are eventually going to be glorified television studios. And I think at some point in time, assuming the NFL still exists 50 years from now, you're going to be far more likely to see stadiums that resemble what the Chargers are playing in right now than these 70 to 75,000 seat monstrosities that are used 10 times a year and maybe for another half dozen concerts and sit empty, compared to people just wanting to watch in high definition or 3D or 4K or whatever the craze will be 20, 30, 40 years down the road. I mean, I really think, short of the model changing drastically in terms of pro sports looking like something we don't even recognize, I think that's what eventually is going to have to happen. To get back to your point as far as this latest black eye for the National Football League with Kareem Hunt, the one thing I do want to point out, and I think it is important to point out while we're talking about these problems, is the amount of good that a lot of players, most players, are doing in this league. This weekend, I want to take a minute talking about it because this weekend was the My Cleats, My Calls initiative that the league has allowed for players to wear different cleats with different messages, different charities, things like that. And that doesn't forgive the bad stuff going on. There's no question about that. But I do think, especially in the context of giving Kareem Hunt and Reuben Foster the media attention that they've gotten, albeit for very negative reasons, I think it is important to mention that most of the players in this league are good people and trying to make a difference in the community in which they play, in their hometowns, trying to do things from charitable standpoints, and that does deserve to be praised. So I don't think the NFL is this all evil, all bad conglomerate. There are bad aspects.
I don't believe that at all. I'm around it too much. I think that the bad and the evil that come out, they're not as interested in stamping it out as maybe they portend to be.
I agree with that 100%. There's no question. And going back to the point...
And while they persecute Kaepernick, by the way, so I always want to point out,
no doubt.
I'm never going to look the other way on this modern-day Curt Flood. And when I walk around with those guys in March, I feel very, very differently being at a cocktail party with what they really represent versus what they say they represent and the flag that they wrap themselves around. It's disgraceful, quite frankly.
Well, I mean, it just... I'll go back to what Amy Trask said. These are the kind of issues they should care about because it does affect the bottom line. You know, you can talk all you want about these guys caring about the bottom line, and they, of course they do. I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry here. So, but they should care more about it because it does impact the bottom line. And, you know, in the case of a Kareem Hunt or a Reuben Foster, there are, you know, we've talked about this, the percentage of women or the percentage of fans who are women in the NFL compared to probably, you know, other sports. I mean, it's significant. So you should care about that. Even if it's not for the right reasons, you should care about it from a bottom line standpoint. Even if that's your motivation, which is icky when you think about it. But
no, but when you're old and you're rich beyond belief, you only know what Mr. Benson knows or what Jerry Jones knows or how Dan feels or, you know, like that's the sensitivity part of that room. All you have to do is read any of what comes out of those rooms, right? Like any of the internal poker last year and Jerry Jones looking to sue the league and all the infighting and Goodell and Kraft's relationship and Bisciotti's relationship with Goodell, which was illuminated, you know, after Ray Rice and where Arthur Blank sits on this and where Stan Kroenke moved all the money. I mean, all of those moving parts in the league, they dictate, they are the integrity, they are the conscience of the league, and the league has failed on that. It really has. And that has also contributed to the empty seats, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are multiple reasons at work there, but you know, you just get to a point where have they not learned their lesson, or have they simply not wanted to learn their lesson? And I think it's a little more of the latter.
It doesn't affect how they eat, so there's no lesson to be learned. You know?
And I just think it's shameful. I mean, it really is, because there is so much good about this league. And when you look about the on-field product, and look, the on-field product hasn't been perfect. And, you know, we've talked about player safety and penalties and offense getting out of control and defense being marginalized. And, you know, we can talk about all those different things, but we tune in every week. And for the most part, it's a really good product. And there are lots of really, really, really good people involved in this league. And so many of them players, and even players that have been wrongly chastised or criticized, players who have done a lot in their local communities. But
well, look at Joe Flacco getting run out on the rails. I mean, who's been a better dude than him, right? I mean, and that happens to everyone here, as Jack Gilden pointed out. Even Johnny Unitas has a statue, but they ran him out of here at one point too. You know,
I mean, and you're always going to have that. I mean, Joe Montana was run out of San Francisco. I mean, you know, if it can happen to him. Now, granted, there was a Hall of Famer stepping in for him in Steve Young. But, I mean, that's going to happen. But I just think for all the positive that is in this league that should be recognized, it's the same stuff that continues to threaten the long-term well-being of the league. But at the same time, we enable it by continuing to watch every week and continuing to give it the time that we do, because it is such a compelling product. So it's sport, it's soap opera, it's an extension of real life in many ways. I mean, there's so many different layers to it. As much as we kind of say it's just a game, we know it's more than that on a number of levels, both good and bad.
Luke, I'm on to Kansas City. I don't know about you. How about that?
Yeah, let's. I'm sure we'll talk just a little bit about the quarterback position between now and then. But hey, a good win on Sunday. And like I said, I mentioned it in passing, but props to Sam Cook and Justin Tucker for their contributions on Sunday. When you're playing the style that the Ravens are playing right now, with run-heavy offense and, you know, the defense doing what it did, you need your special teams to come up big. And we saw Cyrus Jones last week, Sam Cook with the fake, and Justin Tucker. And you know me, I'm not the guy that is interested in sitting there talking 30 minutes about Justin Tucker's greatness, because I just don't have anything more to add to the equation. But I saw Boswell miss another extra point on Sunday night, for example. Kickers around the league continuing to have issues, and yeah, Justin Tucker hasn't missed a kick since his extra point hiccup against the Saints, which was huge, and it was a bad miss at the bad time, but he made 4 field goals on Sunday, and 3 of those from beyond 40 yards, which isn't exactly a gimme.
By the way, at some point later, and I will take a break here, and pay homage to Fremont Mortgage and Carl Delmont and all of our sponsors here, but at some point later in the week, I want to talk about that lame duck John Harbaugh guy who was 4-5 and playing out the string and about to become the Packers coach or the Dolphins coach or maybe Carolina where they have problems now. There'll be a lot of coaching jobs out there, but the John Harbaugh thing as we go to Kansas City here this week, that narrative has changed. So we'll get to that. He is Baltimore Luke. You can find him out on Twitter at Baltimore Luke. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere the internet travels, including all of our podcasts, all of our live content in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Want to give thanks to Carl Delmont and our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. They sponsor all of our live events. We're going to be doing some more as we get up on the holiday season. Make sure you get out to Freedmont.com to learn all the things they're doing into 2019 because it's going to save you money when you're buying, selling, or even if you're just thinking about it, you got to prepare. I prepare. Fremont Mortgage, FremontMortgage.com. Pizza John's, my mom's favorite pizza, my wife's favorite pizza, my favorite pizza. And I have my Strategic Factory koozie, but it's on my Pizza John's cup. You thought that was just a regular, that's like, they sell these there. This is like a hard cup. Strategic Factory makes these kind of things too. Pizza John's. 50 years. We're about to celebrate 50 years there and 100 years for Cole Roofing. It's a big year, 2019 coming up. Get on down to Pizza John's. Get the ravioli. By all means, get the cheesesteaks because they're delicious. And take home some pizza. Throw it on a stone like I do. Pizza John's. You'll love it. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.